All right, I've spent enough time trying to work out whether or not my face is in focus, and I feel like my eyes have just gone blurry instead, so I can't even tell. So I'm hitting record, and here we go. In this video, a little bit different, I'm going to be talking about kind of the five biggest things that I think I've messed up on since starting my brand. If you've somehow stumbled across this video due to the moderately clickbait title, expecting like a flashy, snappy edit, is not what you're going to get. You're going to get me sitting here mumbling for the next like 15 minutes. But I think there's probably some value that you might be able to take from my mistakes. For context, in case that has happened, I'm Giles. I run a brand called the Motus Projects, which is like a parkour focused clothing streetwear brand. We've been going for 6-7 years now. Lots of mistakes along the way, not in a great position right now, and as a result I kind of just decided I was gonna start doing this and taking everything very public and very transparent, just as a way to document things and to see if it helps me. It's already, to be honest, helping me kind of process a lot of things, and have amazing conversations with people, and hopefully you're going to see me get ourselves out of this hole that we're currently in, and go on to bigger and better things. But yeah, I've got some notes here, so apologies if you see me looking over here. I'm not going to do some I'm not going to do it all off by heart. And a lot of these mistakes, well, there's a lot of things that I can think of that are more like, oh, what if? And I'm not going to touch on those. Like, there's a lot of sort of scenarios where I'm like, oh, I wonder if we'd done this, like maybe it all would have turned out differently. But those are, because they're what ifs, I don't treat them so much as mistakes, and they're more just sort of me not choosing to do something. Whereas what I'm going to be focusing on are literal mistakes that I made that I think are probably quite common. I'm not going to cut it out. I don't care. And yeah, some of these mistakes still happen. Some are old. Some still happen in sort of some shape and form, and things that I'm trying to fix, and some that will probably happen until the day the brand dies, because I think some of them just come with the territory of like a D2C e-commerce brand. But the first one is, it was a big one for many years, is just not knowing how to price my products, and also spending too much on samples. Like that, the spending too much on samples is a really easy hole to fall into, depending on your supplier and who you initially find. But when I got into this thing, I literally didn't know about profit margins. I didn't know about anything. I very literally just thought, okay, well, you buy something for X and times it by roughly like 2.5-3 times and then sell it, which ultimately isn't the worst attempt at marking things up, but I wasn't factoring in anything. I wasn't thinking about profit. I wasn't thinking about literally anything. I was just thinking, oh, I've got this price and then I'll times it by this. But the biggest issue that I ran into, because I became essentially too kind of tied up in the process of sampling and designing stuff, is that I wasn't thinking about my product pricing from the start. I was thinking about it at the end, and sometimes that was sort of, I would design something that I was really happy with, and something that had a lot of like bells and whistles on it and was quite expensive to manufacture, and I was working with a random supplier in China who wasn't that like transparent and wasn't giving me a lot of info regarding the price and how much the price would be affected if I wanted to use this style of zipper or this style of zipper or whatever. And then you kind of fall in love with this final product where you've spent a few months like being like, oh, let's add this, like not really thinking about the price because I was just naive. And then they go, oh, that t-shirt is this much to make, or that pair of trousers is this much. And I then sort of go, okay, well, let's times that by 3, and ooh, that's 90 quid for a pair of trousers. No one in my market's paying 90 quid for a pair of trousers. I'll just sell them for 60, thinking like, it's all right, you just don't make as much money. But what you're immediately doing is just slashing all potential profit margins, all like you're just shooting yourself in the foot immediately. And I did that so many times, and it's so weird looking back because it's so obviously a dumb thing to do, but I think a lot of people do make that mistake. And I mean, you can see why I've run into trouble in the past, because I've made decisions like that have negatively affected our cash flow. Because I mean, the second you then put something on sale, you're like, okay, well, we've already taken fucking 30 quid off of the price. Let's take more off because we're doing a discount. You're just, before you know it, you're selling at cost and you're not making any money. And yeah, it's easy to do that. A book I would massively recommend people reading that I was going to have here and show you, but it's in there, and now I'm not going to go out that door because my dog's down there sleeping and he'll probably get up, blah, 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 is by, it's called Profit First, and it's by Mike McCowlitz, I think it is. Really good book with regards to how to structure like your business sort of banking system and how to allocate profit and money towards stock and things like this. And I'll probably mention that book a few times in this video. But yeah, I'd recommend it. So mistake number 2 would be taking on debt at the wrong time, and probably also the wrong kind of debt, and then using that to buy too much stock. So I think you can see, if I was already in that position where I was not selling stuff at a good price, cash flow issues can quickly kind of crop up. You've got a load of stock that you've purchased. Obviously that stock, well, if you're incredibly lucky, that stock sells out immediately, but realistically you don't actually want that. You want that to sell through a period of time. But I keep punching the microphone, I'm sorry. At some point during that period of time, you might then start being like, we've got quite a lot of money tied up in stock. We've already done a sale, so we can't use that to shift anything. We're running short on like just general capital, but we have money in stock, and it's like, okay, well, we could borrow. And also you're like, well, maybe we need to put money into a new collection or a new project. So you're like, well, there's a few options for borrowing money. Like, I don't know, let's say your parents are going to give you some, or you've got a potential. I mean, I wouldn't recommend bank loans. There's a lot of better ways to get money nowadays, especially as your e-commerce store grows. There are sort of payment plans where you can pay back a percentage of your revenue. Shopify, what's it called? Shopify Capital is one of them. PayPal Capital is one of them. Wayflyer, those type of things are one of the better alternatives. But it's very easy to sort of see a figure of money that you could borrow and go, okay, we'll take that, and then go, cool, we'll put that like all into the stock because we've got this big collection that we want to put money into. We'll put this all into this project. But then once again, you've kind of just shot yourself in the foot because you tie up too much money in stock, which maybe doesn't turn over quickly enough, or there's a whole manner of mistakes that can happen. Like you could have factory delays, you could have product delays. All of these different things have happened to us over the years. And once again, it's very easy to find yourself in that position where you're like, we don't have much working capital. There's a massive difference in a business between like liquid cash that can be used to pay overheads and things like this, and then stuff that is tied up in stock or things that you won't receive for a while. And that's really common, I think, especially in like D2C e-com stuff, especially clothing, fashion, because you have these seasonal collections where not every single product sells as well as the others, and it's very easy to get money tied up in the wrong places, get short on money, and then need to basically take on more sort of not investment necessarily, but capital to help things going. And I've definitely been guilty about doing that at sort of a couple of points in the wrong quantities from the wrong places at the wrong times, and then not spending that in the right ways. It's always going to be a bit of a gamble with regards to where you put money and how much money you put into things. Like you can do all the forecasting in the world, but there's always going to be a small level of sort of uncertainty. But I think one of the most important things is making sure that you've got that cash buffer to get you through the storm, which I'll come on to in a minute. Another massive thing that I've been guilty of is spending money on like legacy projects and legacy goals without factoring in exactly how that was going to generate a return. And now this one's really tricky because in our space, if you are a sort of non-parkour practitioner watching this, we put out a lot of videos, we do a lot of projects, we go to a lot of events, and some of these things, there's kind of a catch-22 with regards to this, because Motus would not be where it was or is if we hadn't of, sent athletes to loads of different events and had a presence there. If we hadn't have done really expensive projects like Spitting in the Wind that we were going to sell, and we then would have generated hopefully some form of profit, but instead we put on YouTube, and we didn't use non-copyright music, and it's had sort of, thousands of views, but I don't think we've really earned any money off of that. And that was a huge amount of money that I put into that thing, both from the company and both money that I borrowed, because once again, naive idiot. But at the same time, the trade-off of that is that massively helped the acceleration of our brand. There's people around the world who know the brand through that series. So it's really hard to know what the trade-off is, but I think you just have to be more calculated than I was. It's so easy to get a bit of FOMO over something and be like, oh, we need to be there, or we need to do this. We need to kind of, keep up to a certain level of Storror are the obvious name. They put out incredible content and incredible videos, and they have an incredible presence, and it's very easy to be like, oh, we just need to do this project and that will really help. And sometimes it does, and other times you kind of put loads of money into something and it's really hard to quantify whether or not you get an actual financial return from that. And yeah, that's kind of it. I think really it's like, I've definitely done that so many times. I mean, I think the next point will explain why I've done that to some degree. But it's been a really tricky one, because like I said, you just don't know where the trade-off is. If I'd been really frugal and said, oh, we're not putting a penny into anything, we're just going to make, YouTube videos that we can fund in the UK, etc., I don't know where Motus would be. But in hindsight, I definitely overspent in some places. So yeah. And then, so my fourth mistake, I think, was not necessarily like taking on a team of athletes, but taking them on and then trying to incentivize them to be part of the brand through stuff like that. And I was thinking about this a lot this morning, about why I did that so much. And I think like I've always had a fear about, I had a fear about the guys kind of, walking, they're young, incredibly talented athletes. And I had a fear about them kind of like, getting better offers or wanting to do other things. And it was just like, oh, well, if like, we'll keep doing these trips and we'll keep having these amazing experiences, and who's paying for it? Well, they're all young guys, so I guess I am. And like I said, in some ways it paid off, but in other ways it seriously hurt our financial situation. And I don't know where the sort of, I really hope this is recording. Okay, it is, we're good. I don't know where the like the break even analysis of that all is. But I was definitely trying to kind of please everyone, and I also definitely was scared. Not scared, I think because I was the older guy and they were the younger athletes, and like, I mean, their parents were involved in some of these conversations with regards to trips and things. There was this level of responsibility to do everything the right way, to book hotels rather than, slum it on streets or rooftops, to make sure all the flights are covered, to not ask these like 15, 16, 17-year-old athletes to be fronting too much of their own cash. Instead of really putting a lot on the table and trying to be that provider. And in the back of my mind, it was like, well, if I do this, then these guys are going to be, dedicated to the brand. And then when the times get tough, they're going to be, really, really wanting to stick with the brand and push things through. And that's not to say that some of them haven't been in that position. And I think all of the guys are still incredibly receptive and positive about the brand and all of this stuff. But I think I unfortunately, you give a lot of young sort of guys a lot of stuff essentially for free and some amazing experiences, and you create a sense of expectancy that that's going to continue. And obviously if the brand had, exploded and we had loads of cash, then it in some ways would have continued. Like, that's the dream, isn't it? Fly people around the world and do sick things. But it kind of came to a point where it was like, I'm kind of on one side being like, hey guys, if you, get involved and make more videos and stuff like this, like we'll sort of be able to take it to that next level. And they're sort of saying, well, when are we getting flown to Australia? And I'm like, we don't have the money. And this might sound like I'm sort of casting the blame. Essentially, this all is on my head. Like, the accountability here is just, I was leading with the wrong thing, rather than, I think now I've learned that to get people involved and dedicated to something, they have to experience sort of not necessarily adversity within that, but finding like their own drive through their own work and effort in that. If you give something to somebody, something to somebody just completely on a plate, they don't really have that respect for earning it. And I think it's been a lesson that I've definitely had to learn myself, and now I sort of see in other circumstances. And I wish I could sort of go back and fix it, but I think it's just something to bear in mind if you are a brand owner and you're thinking about sponsoring other people, is that I think definitely it's easier if you're all on the same age, the same playing field, and you're all in the same financial situation. Because I think if in this scenario, a lot of the times it was kind of, oh, well, Motus can cover it, and I was like, yeah, because I didn't want to say no to things, so we definitely overspent on projects and trips and stuff like that. But like I said, it's fucking some of the best times of my life. So absolutely, in some ways, no regrets. But it's just to look back on it and be like, probably wasn't the right thing to do at the right time to some degree. So number 5, I think, would be essentially scaling things too quickly as we scaled and not thinking about the storms and the bad times, because they fucking come. Like, there's some timeline cycle, I can't remember, with regards to how often you have bad times and good times, and really you need to be in business, you need to be preparing for the storms, which effectively is building a good cash buffer from a financial standpoint, and building a good team who are going to be there to weather that with you. That's not to say we didn't do either of those, but we've been through a good few amount of storms now, and from a financial perspective, just simply haven't been as nearly as sort of protected as I would have liked in hindsight. It's not like you have to be like massively frugal. You just have to be forward thinking. You have to be thinking like when the times are good, you have to be thinking, cool, let's get our saves like to an even safer position financially, because all it takes is, I mean, exactly what we've had in the last year or so, where you have a sort of back to back of a few like cataclysmic events with regards to product fuck ups, low sales, high expenses, blah 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 blah, and it can all kind of culminate and really put you in this tough situation that we're in now. Another thing kind of in line with that is, it's easy to go, oh, things are really good, like, you know, this half a year's been really good, like, should we take on this extra expenditure, whether that's renting somewhere, whether that's buying a piece of equipment, etc., and kind of look at your finances and be like, yeah, we can afford that. And it's like, well, could we afford it if everything was cut in half? Like, let's just say in a year's time, everything got cut in half. Like, could we still afford it? And those are the kind of hard questions you have to ask yourself. And I think sometimes you do have to just step back and be like, this, as much as, and it's so hard to remove the emotion. It's so hard to remove the emotion from any purchase that you think, oh, if we get this or if we do this, it's going to level things up. But and like I said earlier, there's always going to be a bit of guessing and always a bit of chance in sometimes it will pay off and other times it won't. But definitely in hindsight, I messed up way too many times there. Way too many times. And yeah, I think ultimately, as you can probably tell, 90% of my biggest mistakes are financial, because I think, and I mean, cash flow problems is the killer of the absolute majority of businesses. It's so common for people to, I just massively poofed out my hair here. It's so common to have this shit happen where sales can drop, expenses can increase, like there's just that creep of money issues that can come in, and before you know it, you're in a bad position, and then something bad happens and you're fucked. So that's the advice I would give, is just get as financially literate as possible. And you don't need to be, you know, fucking an absolute nerd with P&Ls and cash flow forecasts, and you don't have to know every single thing, but read a few good books, listen to a few good podcasts. There's so many amazing resources out there on YouTube and everything like this, and just always have it in your mind, like whenever you're feeling in that emotional state of like, and you're like, your brain's running on the excitement sort of treadmill, try and have something that is pulling it a bit back down and just trying to be a little bit more sensible, not necessarily frugal, but just trying to be smart, because it will honestly save so many mishaps, I think. And I think, yeah, like, it's so easy to stress over insignificant areas of a business, whether you're starting or just generally, and it's so easy to get caught up in doing something for days, weeks, months, and then take your eye off the ball and be like, oh shit, we're kind of in a bad place, or like we should have been focusing more on this. ultimately, as many of you probably would have heard, like the statement that cash is king is very, very true when it comes to just keeping a business alive. So yeah, that would be my top 5 mistakes, and how I would fix it is just learning financial literacy. I'd implore any of you, and even in your own personal lives, like I've said this so many times on podcasts and in other things, it's just one of my biggest mishaps is not being more financially focused at a younger age. And then I think a bonus mistake would be essentially not just talking and being more transparent like I am now, because already in the last few weeks, as I said in the last one of these videos, I've had some incredible conversations with people I wouldn't necessarily expect to, just about the struggles, about these videos, about other things. There's really not much harm in just opening up and just being honest and saying, hey, look, this is my situation, or these are my goals, this is where I want to go, and I'm currently here because I think nobody knows that those are your goals and that you're currently here unless you tell people. So I definitely wish I'd started doing this sooner. Like, hey, if I'd started doing this at the start of Motus, I don't know where we'd be. It would be incredible to look back. And I'm excited, honestly, now to look back from sort of, hopefully in a year's time, I can look back on this and be like, shit. And I'm hoping this is a catalyst in fixing some of the issues. I just don't know how it's going to pan out, but I got weirdly positive hopes. So, yeah, I hope that hasn't been too boring. That's 20 minutes. I should have said this at the start, but if you wanted to have listened to this in podcast format, there's a link in the description where you can go and listen to it. And yeah, feel free to check out Motus, buy some stuff if you want, subscribe to this, support everything, stay fit, drink water, and I'll catch you next time. Love you lots. Normally these videos are just more like updates on my my progress, but I thought I'd do this. And to be honest, if you want more of this stuff, then let me know and I'll do it. Now let me hit record. Am I in focus? Who cares? Bye. Love you.